Hey, what's up everyone? Sangtuary here, and this is episode 3 of Spice for Thought, my new kind of content where I'm trying to go through a particular topic of the game, whether a bit strategic or doing a tier list, something related to the game, trying to be a bit educational, although I'm not a big fan of this word, more like opinion based, because this reflects my own thoughts, my own experience of the game, and yeah. Before we jump in, as usual, if you could hit that like button, comment as well if you have other ideas of this kind of content I could make, because I'm always open to getting also feedback and suggestions. And obviously, if you could hit that subscribe button on YouTube, follow on Twitch, would be magnificent. Helps a lot the channel. So yeah, I'd be very thankful for that. And without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So, episode 3 of Spice for Thought, as I said, and this one will be about the best openings, the best possible round 1 you could have, based on, I mean, obviously it's not a fixed recipe, as usual. This game is so good and so interesting because it's so varied and it depends on so many factors, but I'll try to go through different cases, different situations in which maybe one opening might be a bit better than another, and just still trying to apply some rules, some logic to it, so that maybe you can use that for your own games going forward. I think the first question you need to ask yourself when opening a game, when you start, is what is your goal, at least your early goal, because everyone knows the ultimate goal is to win, but you can have different goals depending on the leader you chose, depending on the cards you find in the row, depending on the combat you'll see, or any other kind of circumstance that pops up in that early game. But you need to try to still find an objective and work towards it. Ideally, you can work towards several objectives at the same time, but sometimes you have to prioritize, and that's where it is important to maybe think of what you really want to do. Here I put a couple of examples. Early Swordmaster, maybe, that's often the goal, and to be honest, often a goal of mine as well, to try and get that Swordmaster as early as possible to get more actions than others, than opponents. Shipping can also be one example of such a goal. Maybe as a side note here, I'm more focused on Rise of X expansion, maybe also with Immortality added to it, but base game is not really what I've had in mind when talking about these openings, but it is, to be honest, quite similar. I mean, those those pieces of advice that I give can be applied to base game as well, except that instead of shipping, you might rather go Sel Melange for the early Swordmaster, and so on, but you can adapt it basically. Maybe the goal would be to acquire a specific card you find in the row. That's often why you would maybe pick a leader like Helena or Armand or Paul, actually, or acquire a specific tech, in which case you might go rather for a Romber, Memnon, or other leaders that can generate spice a bit easier. Last but not least, maybe early the goal might be to block a certain opponent. I've put a little picture of Baron because you probably see where I'm going. Blocking that Hardy Warriors play round 1 when the conflict is too good to let him have it. So that could also be, I mean, part of the goals. Obviously not your sole goal, because blocking one opponent won't make you win, but it can be part of what you need to prioritize with your openings. I've still done some sort of a ranking. This is not true every time, as usual. It is situational, depends really on what you want to do. But here would be the main spots I would target early, more often than not. A keyword being more often than not, because it obviously depends really on what there is in the row and the text and everything we said before. But I think if I had to rank them, like all else being equal, I would say smuggling is so powerful because it gives you that early Solari and shipping action, and if you can recall right after that, that's already 7 Solari and you need 8 for Swordmaster, so it's getting very easy to get there, to get that early Swordmaster. Second, I would say is probably Fall Space, because it unlocks shipping again. So let me maybe do here quickly. Smuggling would be here, Fall Space here obviously, and Fall Space when you reach that friendship, so when you go twice to Fall Space, you get access to shipping, which gives you those 2 moves on the shipping track. Still Suits, very powerful as well, because it gives access maybe to a research station or some extra spice potentially that could then unlock Conspire, which is an other route to Swordmaster and other quick route to Swordmaster. And Wealth is also, I think, a very powerful spot to hit early, because it gives you that 2 Solari, might be useful for a Menta, or might just already help you towards Swordmaster. Other than that, I would say what is also quite powerful is Technego. Oh wait, okay, well it seems, yeah, I thought something was a bit wrong here. It seems we're missing Technego here and Dreadnought. Well, sorry for that. It seems that board I screenshotted is a bit faulty for some reason, but we're obviously supposed to have Technego here, which gives you 1 Persuasion, always useful to potentially buy a better card on the row, and gives you also a Tech Negotiator, or the ability to buy a tech early for discounted price. Technego is also pretty good. Other than that, yeah, I mean, obviously the cities can also be helpful, but I would say this is Hardy Warriors actually can also be helpful to win an early combat, depending on what kind of combat we see here. So yeah, that would be my dumb ranking, let's put it that way, because it's not going to be true every time you play, but it still gives a bit of an idea maybe of what is better than something else. And I think this is where the section becomes a bit more interesting, is the leader-specific openings, because there are some leaders that have maybe affinities with certain openings, and we can go through them quickly now. I think there are 3 leaders where opening with Wealth is quite powerful. Say Ilban, Yuna, and Armand. Not all for the same reasons. Ilban is because of his ability to draw when he pays Solari. That makes Menta a very strong spot, because he draws 2 cards from it, increases persuasion, might get 2 better cards, and obviously also delays or adds 1 more agent action at the very end when nobody else has agents early. So for combat, also very strong to have that additional information. So opening with Wealth gives you the 2 Solari that then allows you to go Menta. Armand would also be to go to Menta, but for a bit of a different reason, because he has his passive ability to be able to trash a card when he has 2 agents on non-faction spots. So opening with Wealth actually allows you to still get an influence with the Emperor, and yet still then after that go Menta plus another non-faction spot, which still gives him his early trash. Very valuable to be able to trash, especially early. Yuna, she's the Solari Queen, so as much Solari as you can get with her Wealth is therefore a very good spot. Hardy Warriors is especially very good for Baron, thanks to his Master Stroke ability. When he deploys 4 troops, he gets an extra 2 influence that it shows at the early stage of the game. But it is also very strong for Tessia, and even stronger for Baron in case the conflict in round 1 is influence conflict. So one that with the first spot gives an influence of your choice. So that might be something you want to block if you're not Baron or Tessia, potentially. Now we have the Spice leaders. So Lido and Handro, they both have a signet ring where you need to pay Spice to get your action. And by the way, both signet rings very powerful, so you kind of want to get that action going. So you kind of want to have that Spice. Even if you don't have your signet ring in the first hand, round 1, depending on what you have in your hand, obviously, if you have a Diplomacy and Seek Allies, you probably want to play both, to be honest. But if you have a bit of a bad hand, go get that Spice. You'll be happy for round 2 to have your ring ready to be powered thanks to the Spice you collected, and that you don't need to hit Imperial Basin or any other Spice generating spot. So that's a very Lido and Handro specific opening, is to go for that Spice early. Obviously with Immortality, given the power of the experimentation cards that actually replace Dune the Desert Planet, it becomes a bit more popular to also open there regardless. But in any other setting, Handro and Lido, they can open with a Spice spot, with a desert spot, should I call them. Deck is also a bit niche, but there are 4 leaders that can actually benefit from it. Ilessa is especially with her second agent. If she puts a dagger away, she gets a spice thanks to that dagger, and might be able to buy a cheap tech. Memnon with his ring gets a spice. He starts with a spice, and Rumber can actually get a tech negotiator with his ring as well. So all 4 leaders can potentially buy a memo quarters, a minimic film, any deck that costs 2 spice basically right in round 1, and that can be very useful. And then the 3 other leaders, Paul, Ariana and Helena, I don't see a particular opening that is like very strong for them. Helena obviously can also go tech nego. It's also powerful maybe to keep the persuasion high, and with her ring be able to buy maybe a good card from the row. Paul pretty much the same with his ring, can draw plus maybe tech nego can also be helpful. Arakeen is also a spot that maybe Paul and Helena might want, but it's not like a definite opening strategy, I would say. It depends a bit on what else happens and on whether you have your ring in hand and so on, but they could also make that happen. They're a bit more versatile in that regard. Ariana as well, to be honest. So that would be it for all leaders. We've covered all 14 leaders with those 2 slides. Now let's go with the conclusion. I mean, you're gonna hate me for that, but as usual, it always depends. You're not gonna open your games always the same way, and thankfully, because otherwise it would get boring. But on what does it depend? That's actually a good question, and I would say there are 4 main points here that I listed that would influence you towards one or the other of the different openings. The first one would be the leaders and the deck mix. Leaders mix as in who are you as a leader and who are you playing against. To take the same example as before, if you play against Baron and Tessia and the combat is influence, you probably need to go Hardy Warriors, to be honest. If you play against, I don't know, like a Beast and you see Memo Quarter on Technego and you want to actually have Technego for yourself, maybe to buy a card or something, well, that might be another opening you're considering. If you're Yuna, you probably want Solari anyways, so kind of have to take that into account. The deck mix is something else, depends what 5 cards do you have in hand. Is it a bad hand? Is it a good hand? If it's a bad hand and you cannot do anything, well, you probably force into going Arakeen to draw another card, hope maybe for faction access to do something else a bit more productive with your second agent. Starting position, very important. As player 1, I would very, very rarely start with False Space, to be honest. Although I put it as my second favorite spot to open with, I wouldn't go there if I'm player 1, to be honest. I would go Smuggling. If I don't have any yellows, I'd probably favor Wealth or Still Suits over False Space, because unless one of the tech is a Memo Quarter that give you a bump, or if you have like the combat that might give you a bump as well, in which case maybe you want to open with False Space and try to unlock shipping early. Other than that, I mean, if you're player 1, you go False Space, let's assume, and everything else goes one way or another. You don't get that second influence. Next round, you're player 4. So likelihood for you to get False Space, almost 0, to be honest. So you're not going to get that early shipping. So False Space doesn't bring that much to you. So that's where starting position, very important as well, I think, in how you decide to open your game. Available cards and text. That's also very obvious. You see something very interesting in the row, as maybe 4 persuasion, that costs 4 persuasion, and you might have 4 persuasion right now. You might want to go Technego with a dagger to make it 5 persuasion to be able to play another card and to still have 4 persuasion to try and buy that card. Techs, well, the same. You might want to grab some spice to be able to buy a tech round 2. That would be the kind of factors as well that could influence your openings. The last one is combat rewards, but I think we went already through that with the leaders mix. Obviously, if there's influence at stake in the combat, that might incentivize some choices as well. So yeah, that would be it for the best openings in my opinion. Let me know in the comments if you have any other tips when it comes to openings, to early game. I'd be very curious to hear about that as well. And let me know as well in the comments if you have any other ideas for the next episode of Spice for Thought. I'm trying to give my own opinions and tips on the game, strategies, tier lists, and so on and so on. Anything, any suggestion is welcome. It might also give me ideas for some other stuff, so it can only help. There's no stupid idea. I'd love to hear about it. So yeah, drop a comment to let me know. Hit that like if you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you very soon. Have a good one. Bye bye.